As you guys are probably aware, computers are very complex machines with lots of different parts. Not all of these parts directly affect your experience in many games, because this channel is kind of based on gaming computers. So, what are the three main components that actually affect gaming performance? So in this video, I'm going to be going over the CPU, the RAM, and the GPU. Which of those three is the most important to prioritise for the maximum gaming performance for your pound? By the end of this video, you'll know what to prioritise in your budget if you're budgeting about making your own computer. As you'll know from my other videos on this channel, that's what I recommend. I recommend that the best thing for your budget is to go out and build your own computer. So, what parts do I believe that you should prioritise? On a broader scale, what actually is a CPU? Now, CPU stands for Central Processing Unit and is considered by many to be the brains of the computer. And it kind of makes sense, because any underlying computing task, calculation, any allocation of memory, all has to run through the CPU. Which means you can't really skimp on your CPU to have a computer that runs quickly. Any form of complex video editing, photo editing, even very logic-based games all require a CPU that can handle intensive tasks. Which is why you shouldn't spend £500 on a graphics card and then buy an Athlon 3000G for £50. That just should not happen. Whilst in modern days, the video elements of processing are left to your graphics card, all the underlying stuff mentioned earlier is processed by the CPU. Now this means the CPU can get pretty hot under these circumstances. Many modern CPUs have TDPs, which is the expected wattage and the heat it'll generate, and its operating capacity, have a TDP of about 65 or 95 watts, meaning that that's a lot of heat to get out of the CPU. CPUs are small little metal discs, probably about the size of a 50p in height, and that's a lot of heat to have on such a small surface, which means all CPUs require a CPU cooler, which comes in all different shapes and sizes. You can get air coolers, which are big metal towers in most cases, or cylindrical discs with a fan blowing through or down. Cold air is brought through the metal fins, and the hot air is exhausted out the back, overall cooling the metal down and therefore cooling the CPU. So what you shouldn't also do is spend big on your graphics card and CPU and then not buy a CPU cooler. Some modern CPUs do come with a cooler in the box. For example, Ryzen 5 3600 comes with a Wraith cooler in the box, which will do you good enough for your basic performance. But if you want to get the most out of your CPU, a third-party cooler, a tower cooler, is recommended. Now, the reason that the CPU needs to be cooled down, you can use an analogy similar to, let's say, people that work in labour. You wouldn't want your builder or your bricklayer, for example, in a big fur coat, because they'd have to work slowly to avoid, I don't know, overheating and dying. It's similar for the CPU. You don't want a CPU to operate at hundreds of degrees, because that's not good for the very delicate components in a CPU. Now, moving on from the small CPU to an overlooked component in the computer, the memory. While the CPU is common knowledge as a main component of a computer, something that isn't is memory. So how important is it really? Unlike the central processing unit and the graphics processing unit, memory doesn't process anything. It acts as a very quick form of storage where data is put into so it can be quickly accessed by the CPU to process. For example, graphics cards also have allocated memory of their own, which is kind of like their own form of RAM. It means that when hugely intensive tasks are being brought through both the processing units, they don't have to go through slower SSDs or even ridiculously slow hard drives to pull this important information. It means that data can be pulled from these hard drives onto the memory and then straight into the CPU, so the task can be done quicker and more efficiently. Therefore, the capacity of memory is very important in this. I've got planned an in-depth video on how memory capacity affects your gaming performance, but in general, the higher capacity of memory means higher performance. It means that of the more intensive tasks, more can be brought onto the memory, which means it can be processed quicker. For example, if you're playing a game and watching YouTube at the same time, both of those need to sit in memory. If you've only got, let's say, one stick of 8 GB of memory, it means that there's nowhere for that Chrome tab to go with YouTube on. It may mean you're not able to do both things at once, for example. So that's another thing that you can't skimp on in gaming. You can't skimp on a CPU cooler, or memory. In 2025, the minimum for a gaming computer has to be 16 gigs of RAM. Any less than that and you're really lingering on the edge, what is actually enough to run Windows and all the applications that you'll want to. There's no reason to not buy the right amount of RAM for you. The speed of your RAM is also important here, plus the cache latency. That's something that I'll go into deeper in my full in-depth video, which I will leave in the description when I've uploaded it. RAM in 2025 is some of the cheapest components of the computer. When I built my computer, 16 gigs of RAM cost me 70 quid. It's now 30. CPU. very important. RAM, very important. But there's a key player here that I haven't gone into yet. This, as I assume many of you are aware, is a graphics card. In my case, I'm holding an RTX 3060 Ti Founders Edition. As you can see, it's got two clear fans for cooling. This one sucks in air from this side and pushes it out the back. This one sucks air in through that side, out that side, and out the middle. Cooling, like the CPU, is very important for a graphics card. Compared to CPUs, however, especially for gaming, graphics cards hold a lot more weight in the performance. If you had, for example, £800 to spend on a computer, I'd recommend spending at least half of that on a graphics card for gaming, because it's those graphics tasks that the graphics card runs. Kind of in the name, really. For gaming, it's hard to look over the importance of the graphics card. Moreover, in 2025, graphics card memory is really important. For games that require in-depth shaders, lots of assets and lots of graphics in general, higher memory is needed. In 2025, to run a game at probably at 1440p, let's say, 6 GB of video memory is definitely needed, with 8 as probably advised. Now my card has 8 and I don't struggle at 1440p, but I reckon in a few years down the line, I will. It's only really a matter of time. Therefore, if you're buying a card for a gaming computer in 2025, 8 gigs of video memory is the minimum. I wouldn't advise going any lower than that. Now, graphics cards are a very convoluted and confusing market. The names kind of give a sense of what you're getting, but they also don't. There's two superpowers in the graphics card market. There's AMD and there's Intel. Intel schemes, the first letter means generation, the third letter means tier in that generation. At the end of each card, Ti is meant to be the top model of that tier, but Super is the middle model below Ti. With AMD, it honestly depends. The first letter means generation, the second one usually means tier. There's XTs on the end. XTX is best, XT is middle. It's such a hard model to get your head around. Why can't they just be named graphics card 1, 2, 3, and 4? I'm not sure, they're not sure, no one's sure. Who is sure? Luke Shaw? Manu? No one knows. And that's the crux of it, really. To understand what graphics card to buy, it depends all on your budget. Therefore, I'd recommend doing detailed research on each graphics card that you're thinking of getting to understand which is the best for you. So, those are the big three for gaming. Your graphics card, your RAM, and your CPU. Realistically, you shouldn't skimp on any of them. But if you're working on a tight budget, the priority goes in this order. Graphics card, CPU, memory. You can't function when gaming in 2025 without a good graphics card, which is followed closely by the CPU. Because in a world of multitasking, which we all live in, your computer won't be able to handle the large tasks without a good CPU. But leading on from that, in a world of multitasking, if you don't have the RAM which is capable of storing all of your open applications, you can't multitask. So maybe the tiered system is flawed. Basically, to summarize, you shouldn't skimp on anything. I've told you in this video the importance of each component, so I suppose for your sense, it's up to you on what you want to spend your money on. Now, over time on this channel, I will be going in depth on each specific budget for a gaming computer. So if you don't want to miss that, make sure to subscribe. This is a new channel and we are gaining subscribers slowly, but if you want to see more videos like this, then definitely subscribe, leave a like, and tell me what I'm doing wrong or right in the comments. Feedback is greatly appreciated. I've been Hardware Focus UK. Thanks for your time.